Hi everyone. I'm 29, and up until a month ago, I thought I knew everything there was to know about my fiancé, Ben. We've been together for almost 5 years. I'm not someone who rushes into relationships, and we really took our time getting to know each other. I mean, we lived together for 3 years, met each other's families, went through a pandemic together, adopted a dog, everything. Ben is sweet, quiet, very routine-driven. He's always been a little emotionally reserved, but I chalked it up to his childhood. His mom died when he was young, and his dad raised him alone. He told me once that he used to have a twin brother, Caleb, but they were separated when they were 7. Apparently, there was some complicated custody battle between the mom's side and the dad's, and the boys were split up. He hadn't seen or heard from Caleb since. I only heard about Caleb once, maybe twice, in all our years together. It was always said with this heavy sadness, like an old wound he didn't want to reopen. So I never pushed. I figured if Caleb ever wanted to find him, he would have by now. I didn't know how much it haunted Ben, or maybe he just got used to burying it. But then, about a month ago, someone knocked on our door. It was a Sunday morning. I was still in pajamas, making coffee. Ben was in the shower. Our dog was barking like crazy at the door, which was weird. He never barks unless it's a stranger. I looked through the peephole and saw a man standing there, about our age. He looked familiar. In a strange way. I opened the door just a crack, and the man gave me a soft smile and said, "I think Ben lives here. I'm Caleb. I'm his brother." That's where this story really begins. So I stood there in the doorway, frozen. This guy, Caleb, he looked like Ben. Same eyes. Same height. Same voice, even. But something about him felt off. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. His posture was too perfect. Like he was trying to mimic something. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like watching a video of someone you know, where everything looks right but feels just a little wrong. Before I could respond, Ben came around the corner in a towel, rubbing his hair with another. He looked up and just stopped cold. It was like the world hit pause. The two of them stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then Caleb whispered, "Benji?" That was the first time I ever saw Ben cry. He didn't say anything. He just walked straight over and hugged him like he was trying to hold on to something real. I stepped back to give them space, but I couldn't stop staring. Caleb didn't cry. He didn't even flinch. He just stood there, arms loosely wrapped around Ben, eyes open over his shoulder, watching me. They talked in the living room for hours. I gave them space, made tea, listened from the kitchen. Caleb explained that he had been raised by their mom's sister, moved around a lot, never knew how to find Ben until he recently did one of those ancestry DNA kits and got a hit. Apparently, Ben had uploaded his profile a few years ago but never checked back. Caleb said it took a while to track him down, but once he had a possible location, he just showed up. Ben was overwhelmed. He kept asking him questions about childhood stuff, songs they used to sing, a scar he had on his knee. Caleb answered every one, sometimes before Ben even finished asking. It was like he'd spent years studying this moment. I should have been happy for Ben. And part of me was. But that other part, that gut feeling I couldn't shake, just kept screaming at me. Something was wrong with Caleb. It wasn't just how he talked or smiled. It was how he kept looking around our apartment, like he was taking mental inventory. Like he was casing the place. And then, later that night, Ben asked the question that made my stomach drop. Would it be okay if Caleb stayed with us for a while? I didn't say yes right away. Ben was clearly overwhelmed, emotional, probably not thinking clearly. I didn't want to be the cold-hearted fiancé who told him his long-lost brother couldn't stay the night. So I said, just a couple days, right? And Ben nodded, already pulling out blankets for the guest room. Caleb didn't bring a bag. No backpack, no phone charger, not even a toothbrush. When I asked if he needed anything, he said he liked to travel light. That was weird. Who shows up unannounced at someone's house, not even knowing if they'd be welcome, and comes with nothing? That first night, Caleb barely spoke to me. He was polite, but cold. All his attention was on Ben, asking questions about his job, our dog, where we go on vacation. Normal stuff, I guess, but it felt more like an interview than a reunion. He kept leaning in when Ben talked, like he was analyzing every word. I barely slept that night. Something about having him in our house made my skin crawl. I couldn't explain it. I told myself I was being paranoid. That it was just new and strange, and that I should give it time. The next morning, I woke up to find Caleb already awake, sitting in the living room, just staring at our wedding photo on the shelf. He didn't move when I walked in. Didn't smile. Just looked over at me and said, "You're lucky. Ben's always been the favorite." That caught me so off guard I didn't know how to respond. I forced a smile and offered him coffee. He declined. Said he doesn't drink caffeine, it makes him too alert. By the time Ben came out of the bedroom, Caleb was all smiles again. Like flipping a switch. He even laughed when Ben made some dumb joke about breakfast. But then I noticed something. My gold necklace, the one Ben gave me on our 3rd anniversary, was gone from the dish where I always keep it. I checked everywhere. The bathroom, the bedroom. Nothing. I didn't say anything out loud. Not yet. I just kept glancing at Caleb, who never once asked to borrow anything. Who never even walked near my nightstand. Or so I thought. I waited until Ben left for work to check the guest room. Caleb was still sleeping flat on his back, perfectly still, no covers bunched up, barely any movement. It was eerie. I stood there for a full minute, just watching. He didn't even twitch. Eventually, I told myself to grow up and stop being weird. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was staged. I crept over to the closet. I hadn't been in there since we moved in, so it was basically empty, just some extra pillows and a couple old boxes. The door was cracked open. Not wide, just enough to make me notice. I reached out to pull it open completely, and paused. Inside, on top of the box labeled photos and cards, was my necklace. Just sitting there. In plain sight. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it. My first thought was that maybe I'd dropped it, and Caleb saw it and meant to give it back. But, in the closet? On top of a sealed box? I walked straight out and sat in the kitchen for almost an hour, trying to figure out what to do. Should I confront him? Tell Ben? Was I just being paranoid? Eventually, I made a choice I'm still not sure I regret. I took the necklace, put it back in its place, and said nothing. That afternoon, Caleb came out of the room smiling. Said he was going for a walk. I watched him leave and waited a few minutes before sneaking into the guest room again. I wanted to see if anything else was off. I opened the closet again, nothing had moved. But when I checked the nightstand drawer, I found something that didn't belong. A phone. Not Ben's. Not mine. And definitely not Caleb's. He told us he lost his old one on the bus and hadn't gotten a new one yet. It was locked, of course. But I recognized the model. It was brand new. It had a cracked screen and a piece of duct tape covering the logo. Why lie about not having a phone? When I closed the drawer, something fell out, barely noticeable. A photo. It was a picture of me. Candid. Taken from across the street. I was holding groceries. I had no idea it had even been taken. I froze. Because this wasn't from this week. It was from 2 months ago. I sat on the floor of that guest room for I don't know how long, just staring at the photo. It wasn't printed professionally, it looked like it had been done at home. Slightly curled edges, cheap paper. But it was me, no question. Same coat, same bag. The timestamp in my head was instant. That was the day I stopped by the florist before meeting Ben for lunch. 2 months ago. Before Caleb ever showed up. Except now I had proof, he'd been watching me. Long before he arrived claiming to be Ben's long-lost twin. I didn't tell Ben that night. I tried to. I really did. But the second I saw his face, all soft and hopeful, showing me old childhood drawings Caleb had remembered, I couldn't do it. He looked like he was getting a piece of himself back. How do you take that away from someone? So I did the worst possible thing, I said nothing. I went through dinner pretending everything was fine, nodding along while they talked about maybe going to visit the aunt who raised Caleb. I forced smiles. Laughed at the right times. But that night, while they watched a movie, I went into our office and started digging. I pulled up every social media profile, ancestry forum, even Reddit threads about sibling reunions. Nothing. No Caleb Martin born the same year. No photos. No posts about searching for a brother named Ben. It didn't add up. If Caleb really had been searching for 2 decades, where was the digital trail? Around midnight, I cracked. I sent an email to the DNA kit company. Ben had told me he submitted a profile years ago but never checked the results. I asked if they could confirm if anyone named Caleb had ever matched with him, and when. I wasn't expecting a fast reply. But they answered by morning. And their answer? There was no match. No Caleb. No one even remotely close. When I got the email from the DNA company, I swear my stomach flipped. It wasn't vague. It was specific. They confirmed that Ben's only known matches were distant cousins and that no sibling, no twin, had ever submitted a kit under the name Caleb or any close DNA profile. I sat there reading it over and over, hoping I'd misread it. But I hadn't. Which meant only one thing, Caleb wasn't his brother. And if he wasn't family, who the hell was he? The first thing I did was make a backup of that email, sent it to my work address, then deleted the message off Ben's laptop. He's not Snoopy, but I couldn't risk him finding it before I figured out what to do. The weirdest part? When I walked out into the kitchen that morning, Caleb was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept, just sitting at the table, eyes glassy, sipping water like someone who'd been crying all night. But when he looked at me, he smiled. Calm. Almost smug. He said, "Did you sleep okay?" And I just nodded, heart hammering. He tilted his head, watching me. Like he was waiting to see if I'd flinch. I asked where Ben was, and he said Ben had left early for a work call at a cafe down the street. Which meant I was alone with him. I kept my distance, pretending to tidy the kitchen. I needed to get something, anything, out of that room. And fast. But just as I was about to grab my phone and leave, Caleb said something that chilled me to the bone. He said, "You know, I've always wondered what kind of woman Ben would end up with. I used to imagine her face. I was pretty close." I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just walked into the bedroom, locked the door, and called my friend Erin, the one person I knew would believe me without asking 1,000 questions. She told me to get out of the house now. Don't wait. Don't give him the benefit of the doubt. I was packing a bag when I heard the front door open. Ben was back, and Caleb greeted him with, "She knows." When I heard those words, "she knows," my hands froze mid-pack. Ben's voice came next, confused and soft. "What do you mean?" I couldn't hear Caleb's exact reply. Just a low murmur, too quiet to make out. But something in his tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't angry. It was controlled, like he'd already rehearsed this moment. I stayed behind the door, heart pounding, waiting for Ben to knock, to ask what was going on, to demand an explanation. Instead, I heard footsteps moving away. And then silence. I waited 5 full minutes before cracking the door open. They were in the living room, both seated like nothing had happened. Caleb looked calm. Ben looked shaken. His hands were clenched, his foot tapping uncontrollably. He turned to me and asked if I wanted to talk. I told him yes, but not here. I asked him to come with me for a walk, just the two of us. He looked at Caleb, then back at me, and said, "Not now." I promised Caleb we'd look through some old photos today. That's when I realized how far this had already gone. Ben believed him. Completely. Even with no DNA match. Even with the missing necklace. Even with the creepy picture I hadn't told him about yet. This man, this stranger, was sitting in our home, rewriting his entire childhood, and Ben was eating it up. And the scariest part? I think Ben wanted to believe it. Caleb saw the look on my face. He smiled, real slow, and said, "She thinks I'm lying." Ben didn't say a word. He just looked at me and whispered, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." That's when I knew I was on my own. So I left. Not permanently. Just for the night. I told Ben I needed space, which wasn't a lie. Erin picked me up within the hour, and I stayed at her place. I told her everything, showed her the photo, the fake DNA match, the email. She didn't hesitate. Her exact words, "That guy's not here to play family. He's here for something else." But what? That night, as I was falling asleep on Erin's couch, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. All it said was, "You shouldn't have looked in the drawer." I sat up so fast I nearly dropped my phone. The message, "You shouldn't have looked in the drawer," wasn't just creepy. It was a direct threat. I hadn't told anyone about finding that photo in Caleb's nightstand. Not even Erin. Which meant whoever sent it was in the house. And they knew. I double-checked the number. It wasn't saved, but the area code matched ours. I stared at it for a long time, debating whether to block it or respond. In the end, I did neither. I just turned the phone off and lay back down, eyes wide open in the dark. Erin was already asleep. I didn't want to wake her, not yet. I needed to think. What scared me more than anything was the timeline. That photo wasn't recent. Caleb hadn't taken it after he showed up, he took it before. Meaning he'd been following me, possibly watching me for weeks or months before ever knocking on our door. And now he was inside it. I barely slept. In the morning, I had 3 more messages, all from the same number. No names. Just, "Ben believes me. Don't ruin it. Go home." I showed them to Erin, who immediately wanted to call the police. But what could we say? That my fiancé's supposed long-lost twin was lying about who he was? That he took a picture of me from across the street, maybe stole a necklace, and now he was pretending to be family? To anyone else, it would sound paranoid. Worse, crazy. And Ben? He wouldn't back me up. Not anymore. Caleb had already embedded himself too deeply. But Erin had an idea. She worked at a design firm where one of her clients ran a private security company. Nothing fancy, mostly workplace security systems, background checks, that kind of thing. But they had access to tools, databases, people. That afternoon, we called in a favor. We gave them what we had: Caleb's name, the phone model I saw, the approximate age and background. Aaron's contact said he'd run it all through their system. No guarantees, but he'd do what he could. While we waited, I stayed off my phone. I didn't want to provoke Caleb anymore. But it didn't matter. Because late that night, when Aaron and I got back to her apartment after grabbing dinner, her front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was untouched. Except for one thing. Right there on the kitchen counter, sitting perfectly centered, was a folded piece of paper. My necklace, my actual one, was looped through it like a bow. I picked it up with shaking hands and unfolded the paper. Written in neat, all-caps handwriting. "You forgot something. Don't stay gone too long." We called Aaron's security contact immediately. He told us to leave the apartment now and meet him at his office. No detours, no stops, just go. The fact that someone had broken into her place without taking anything, without triggering her alarm, and left a personal item and a note, that was enough for him to stop treating this like a favor and start treating it like a threat. By the time we got to his office, he had something for us. He'd pulled every database he had access to: employment records, traffic violations, even old yearbooks. The conclusion? There is no Caleb Martin. Not just no match to Ben. No records of a Caleb Martin born within 5 years of Ben's birthday, in any nearby states, with any matching identifiers. Nothing. But then came the part that sent actual chills through me. He ran facial recognition using the photo I took of Caleb from the hallway camera outside our apartment. It wasn't great resolution, but it was enough. And it hit on someone else entirely. Tyler Reese. Arrested 7 years ago for fraud and impersonation. No jail time, just a fine and probation. Known for embedding himself into families by pretending to be long-lost relatives. Had a habit of using real names of actual missing persons, blending truth with lies. And the kicker? In one of the archived reports, Tyler had once posed as the missing cousin of a woman in upstate New York, stayed with her for weeks, got into her family's finances, was about to convince them to co-sign a business loan before someone got suspicious and ran a check. This was his pattern. He didn't just lie. He studied people. Chose targets who wanted to believe. Lonely families. People with holes in their pasts. Like Ben. When I saw the mugshot next to Caleb's face, I almost threw up. Same smirk. Same stare. Same pretend warmth behind the eyes. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a lie. This was a con. And we were the latest mark. Aaron's contact told us flat out, don't go back to the apartment. Not until we got police involved. But I couldn't wait. Because Ben was still there. Alone. With him. I grabbed my phone and texted Ben, just one sentence. "Whatever you do, don't tell Caleb I know." But there was no reply. And when I called? Straight to voicemail. When Ben didn't answer, I knew something was wrong. It was past midnight, and the lights in our apartment were off when Aaron and I pulled up. Her security contact was on the phone with local police, but I couldn't wait. I sprinted to the door. Aaron was yelling for me to stop, but I had this sick feeling I needed to know Ben was okay. I burst into the apartment and found it dead silent. No TV. No voices. No dog. Just darkness. I moved fast, whispering Ben's name as I flipped lights on room by room. Nothing in the living room. Nothing in the kitchen. Guest room, empty. Caleb's bag was still there, but open now. Inside, scissors, a bottle of prescription meds I didn't recognize, and my old high school yearbook. Pages marked. Then I heard it. A low thump from our bedroom. I flung the door open, and froze. Ben was on the bed, hands zip-tied, eyes wide. He was breathing, thank God. But he looked terrified. Caleb, or Tyler, or whoever he really was standing beside him, holding a box cutter. Calm. Not panicked. Just blank. He looked at me, and smiled like I'd walked in on a surprise party. Then he said, "I never meant to hurt him. I just needed him out of the way." It hit me all at once. He didn't just want to play long-lost brother. He wanted Ben's life. Me. The apartment. The dog. The job. Everything. And Ben, quiet, trusting Ben, was the easiest obstacle. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just kept him talking. "Why?" I asked. I barely recognized my own voice. And he said, without blinking, "Because you looked at him the way I always wanted someone to look at me." Erin came in next, behind me, holding her phone out. Sirens blared down the street. Tyler heard them and dropped the box cutter without a word. He actually laughed. then raised both hands and walked out of the room like it was all some kind of performance. Police tackled him in the hallway. They took him in, finally connecting him to his other cons. He's facing multiple charges: identity fraud, attempted assault, unlawful confinement. The list is growing. They found more fake IDs in his bag, photos of other couples, plans. Ben's okay, physically. But emotionally? That's going to take time. He blames himself. He keeps saying he wanted a brother so badly he ignored every red flag. And me? I keep thinking about how close we came to losing everything. We're in therapy now. Both of us, trying to rebuild. Some days, I still check the locks twice. I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone's standing in the hallway. I don't know if that fear will ever go away completely. But one thing I do know? You can spend years building a life with someone, and it only takes one knock at the door for a stranger to almost steal it all. Thanks for listening, Reddit. I just needed someone to believe me.